In mission together we all join our hands. In mission together throughout many lands. With our hearts united, our voices we raise. To God our Creator in glorious praise.
Greetings, neighbors. This is Reflections, a show sponsored by the Paducah Cooperative Ministry where we, all of us together, do God's work with human hands. My name's Gregory Waldrop, and I'm the pastor at Fountain Avenue United Methodist Church, and I'm a co-host for this show along with Karen Winkel, the pastor at the United Church of Paducah. Welcome, Karen.
Good to be together, Gregory.
It's good to be
Today
here.
we are studying, the two of us, Psalm 22. We've been doing a psalm study this whole year, and this is a psalm that has one line that everyone will recognize. Most folks, when you're talking about the psalms, think of the psalm right after this one, Psalm 23, and this is a psalm that just so touches upon really the depth of human experience, the deep, difficult part, and then where we find hope and help. And
Jesus must have known this one by heart, mustn't he?
I believe so. Yeah, and he lived it. He lived it. So we'll be studying this together. I will be reading, and it's a longer psalm, but I'll be reading from the New Revised Standard Version, and those words will be on the screen as I read, and then we'll just dive in and see what fruits come from our reflections together. So this is Psalm 22, and there's a little subtitle in my Bible that says a plea for deliverance from suffering and hostility, and I think all human beings can relate to both suffering and hostility. And so the psalm begins this way. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me, from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but find no rest. Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our ancestors trusted. They trusted, and you delivered them. To you they cried and were saved. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am a worm and not human, scorned by others and despised by the people. All who see me mock at me. They make mouths at me. They shake their heads. Commit your cause to the Lord. Let him deliver. Let him rescue the one in whom he delights. Yet it was you who took me from the womb. You kept me safe on my mother's breast. On you I was cast from my birth, and since my mother bore me, you have been my God. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near, and there is no one to help. Many bulls encircle me, strong bulls of Bashan surround me. They open wide their mouths at me like a ravening and roaring lion. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted within my breast. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to my jaws. You lay me in the dust of death. For dogs are all around me, a company of evildoers encircles me. My hands and feet have shriveled. I can count all my bones. They stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among themselves, and for my clothing they cast lots. But you, O Lord, do not be far away. O my help, come quickly to my aid. Deliver my soul from the sword, my life from the power of the dog. Save me from the mouth of the lion. From the horns of the wild oxen, you have rescued me. I will tell of your name to my brothers and sisters. In the midst of the congregation, I will praise you. You who fear the Lord, praise him. All you offspring of Jacob, glorify him. Stand in awe of him, all you offspring of Israel. For he did not despise or abhor the affliction of the afflicted. He did not hide his face from me, but heard when I cried to him. From you comes my praise in the great congregation. My vows I will pay before those who fear him. The poor shall eat and be satisfied. Those who seek him shall praise the Lord. May your hearts live forever. All the ends of the earth shall remember and turn to the Lord, and all the families of the nations shall worship before him. For dominion belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. To him indeed shall all who sleep in the earth bow down. Before him shall bow all who go down to the dust, and I shall live for him. Posterity will serve him. Future generations will be told about the Lord and proclaim his deliverance to a people yet unborn, saying that he has done it. This is the word of God for us, the people of God. May it come to life in us.
Thanks be to God. Amazing words. I know there's some folks who think that Jesus may have even quoted this whole psalm there on the cross, of which is recorded only the first lines, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? But really, whether he said it all or not, this whole chapter gives content to that plea, doesn't it? To that cry, that anguished cry.
I mean, that moment on the cross is just embodied.
Everything that they'd been speaking for millennia. They'd been praying this prayer, and Jesus lives it out in their midst.
And it's such. I love the Psalms that are solely uplifting are wonderful, but I love the tension here between the agony that this person is in, and then the God kind of breaking through, and then there's some agony again, and God breaking through. Right. That seems to be so much our relationship with God as we go through life and encounter hostility and suffering, that we get down in the depths and lament and weep and cry and feel forsaken and kind of look up, and we'll see God somehow breaking through, and yet there's still maybe some more suffering involved.
I think we do a good job with the praise psalms that are a part of the tradition. I'm not so sure we pick up and lift up the lament psalms, which are equally as important and even more numerous than are the praise psalms. This has this sort of, as you say, this interesting cross between the two. I have a good friend who believes that it is in lament that really the transformation, the change that God has in mind for us all really begins. That it's only as we're able to cry out and to grieve in the deepest kind of ways that we're able to move towards the heights that God has in mind for us. And of course, these words and these words, when they're found on the cross, are a good example of just that kind of notion.
Well, you really have to kind of go there. I mean, as you're talking, I'm thinking about one of the principles in recovery, which is, you have to feel it to heal it, and where we're unwilling to go, it makes it very hard for God to go there with us. And one of the things in this psalm that really stands out for me as I reflect on what I think is key to your faith is this is very incarnational. This is very embodied. This isn't someone saying, I'm suffering existentially. I mean, the suffering here is very, it's reflected in a very bodily sense, right. And I know that incarnation is important in your.
Yeah, it is very important, and not just the actual physical pain, which of course the Mel Gibson movie Passion really highlighted for us, but again, it's also this agony, this loss that Jesus is feeling, this and not just a loss, but a humiliating loss. I mean, he isn't just killed, he is humiliated. He is killed as a capital criminal, as refuse outside the walls of the city. And this psalm picks up that agony, that anguish, that loss. This isn't just about, this isn't just about a martyr's death. This has a different component to it, and it is a God who risked humiliation and anguish and loss, who risked it all, who risked losing everything for the sake of the world, of us. And this psalm has been, like you say, we say, been prayed for 1,000 years. 1,000 years before Jesus lives it out.
But even when we live this out, because this is our psalm too. So much. I think when we're suffering, it isn't just something that we're aware of between our ears or just within our heart. We feel it in our very bones and our very body. I had an experience. A difficult time when it was like every cell had a little chalkboard and fingernails on it. I mean, I just could feel that run through my body, and I think there's in that suffering, the naming of it as such a physical thing really affirms that part of the suffering that we experience.
Right. Yeah.
And so we're crying out because that is running through us. And I think Jesus's death on the cross makes that so obvious. But we really do, in those times of suffering, feel it.
Right.
In the cells.
Right. And it is an enormous affront to everything we think God ought to be about. It really is. In the middle of those deepest anguished moments, it really is. We really wonder, what in the world has God can God say about this?
Yeah.
Because it does feel like there's no loving God would put us through this.
In the psalm, there's kind of that, the psalmist is kind of reckoning with that question: where is God in this? Is maybe God's responsible for this in part, because I've cried out and maybe God has forsaken me, and then you kind of feel that transition from, no, that's not it. That's not quite the answer to that question. What God is the one who's saving me, is the one who's redeeming me, and the scope of this is so huge because there's every generation in here. It isn't just this hour sort of scope here.
Right.
It's those who've gone before and those yet to come all are involved in this because it's the God of all generations.
Yeah. I can remember serving as a chaplain in the hospital and sitting with a woman whose 23-year-old son died of leukemia. And at the time of death, she was poured out like water. All her bones were out of joint. Her heart was like wax. It melted. She wept and wailed in the middle of this fancy medical center. And immediately the doctor on call rushes in and says, "No, there, it'll be all right. It'll be all right." Those were her words. It was a female doctor. "It'll be all right. It's going to be all right." And quickly gave her a sedative. Now, this is 30 years ago. I think the practice is different these days. But after reflecting on that, I began to realize, when would it ever be all right again if you lost your 23-year-old child? when would it ever? Would the right reaction be to that kind of grief and loss and lament? And the doctor was obviously saying fairly standard words, but they were completely inappropriate, as was the medicine, at least religiously speaking. It became very clear. As a chaplain, I should have had some insistence on letting this grief bear its course and run its course. And sometimes we lose the power that God gives us by refusing to feel this outrage, this loss. I can remember in another instance having heard a woman lament her own sickness for a long time as we sat and talked. She'd been chronically ill, and it was very unfair, and she was young and should be vigorous but wasn't, and she grieved it and talked it deep for over an hour. And I said, as we got ready to leave, I said, have you ever prayed this? And she said, oh no, I could never say this to my sweet Jesus. And I think she missed out on some of the power that God had in mind for her and in store for her to get through this, maybe even to bring some health and life out of her situation, because she was did not believe Jesus could handle it. This Jesus whose own innocent suffering on the cross was clear. I think she lost out of the power that this psalm speaks to.
And I'm just thinking on my own experience in the church and even my own leadership as a pastor, how difficult it is to convince people that going there is something that God can handle. And I think, as I hold back in my, pulpit leadership, certainly in private conversation, I encourage people to go there, but that's a dangerous place to go, and vitally important, because we find a God who can handle that and doesn't leave us in that place.
Right.
But
yeah, things are genuinely up in the air here. They're in the balance. You don't know how they're gonna work out, and there's a lot to be lost, but a lot to be gained by going there, isn't there? It really is. I think it's the culture subdues us, and this is not a subdued text by any means.
No, not at all.
I know we think of Job as the patience of Job as being the lesson that Job teaches, but maybe Job's teaching us how to shake an angry fist at God. Because part of what Job did was shake an angry fist. What's going on here? He did it in faith and with a deep-hearted belief that even if he died from all this difficulty and trouble, he wouldn't come before him faithless, but he still shook the angry fist at God and dared get an answer from God about all this. And I think that's part of this 22nd Psalm.
You bet. You bet.
It does end in praise. He does end in, as from thee comes my praise in the great congregation. I will tell of your mighty works to this, my people.
Yeah. What we're deprived of is the time span, and I think that's why it's so hard for us, because it's like, well, I went into lament and I'm not in that praise place, so that's a disincentive. But too bad there's not a way to kind of line this out and say, well, that it begins in this
September
year and it ends at this point, because that is how
Right.
how these psalms are lived out in our lives. It's not something, this cathartic experience that then we, rise up
Immediate.
from the couch or the bed
Right.
or the walk outside, singing God's praises. We might feel a little lifted up, but we're not
Yeah.
there yet.
There is always a time component, isn't there, on lament and also forgiveness, isn't there? Also, we sort of have that notion about forgiveness as well. God may forgive people instantaneously, but humans, it takes a while and a lot of work, and so it is with this grief. Same way.
And I don't know about you, but for me, my pastor's heart breaks when I'm with someone in a place of lament and, know that it's not yet resolved for them. I would like for them to be in that place, but all we can do is just, live with the timing that is.
Right. I know our Jewish brothers and sisters pray the prayer of lament, the Kadesh, the promise, for a year, every week, at loss or in times of agony, and then at the year, then at every anniversary of the loss, again. But they imagine at least a year this transformation taking place. I'm quite confident it can be that long or longer, even, before real relief comes from the deepest betrayals, the deepest losses, deepest hurts.
I'm thinking, as you're talking, I'm remembering something that I saw in a video when I was at seminary about the way in which a particular Catholic community in San Antonio lives out Holy Week. And on Saturday of Holy Week, so you've got the crucifixion on Friday, that Saturday is a very purposeful day where people gather at at their church, and there is a figure, like a mannequin who's there that is dressed as Mary. And people line up, and one by one, and the line in the video was very long. This was very meaningful. Come and express their condolences to the mother of Jesus. And this is kind of transforming imagination. But they say, I am so sorry for your loss. I too have known suffering. And they have this private moment where they share their suffering with Mary, kind of ritually, and join in that. And I'm thinking, this isn't just something. There's a friend here. There's someone who knows our suffering, and so we can kind of visit, even though we don't have a face to go with us, a personality to attach to. It's so important to find someone whose experience can kind of connect with ours, and so there's a guide here. There isn't. This isn't just instruction for our minds, or a time to think about who this might have been, or to see how this is lived out in Jesus. But there's somebody on this page who can speak to us, who knows that same territory.
Right. It's very interesting because, human life gives us many moments of drastic loss, of a hopelessness that it doesn't seem any way out. There doesn't seem to be any way this can ever be rectified or reclaimed or reconciled in any way. There are plenty of moments when life is hanging in the balance and we really genuinely don't know how it's going to turn out. And this is a passage for that, isn't it? This is something like that it would be an important reminder of that, wouldn't it?
Because, particularly for people that are experiencing, profound suffering, that is so isolating for people because, we're not in a culture that encourages us to go there anyway. But if you're in that place, it goes with you everywhere you go. You can't really forget it for,
Right.
but maybe a minute or two. But there is kind of an isolation, I think, for people who are suffering like the woman that you described. Where else could she go? Who's going to hear that?
Right.
Where is she going to feel free? So there is a place to take that and to find some companionship there.
Well, I can remember the first time I read the 22nd Psalm, and because I realized that Jesus wasn't, he was living out of the tradition. That I began to realize how the Scripture oftentimes gives us words when there aren't any words. When we don't know what to say, a lot of times these passages probe the depths and give us words at least to maybe not to express fully, but at least to acknowledge the moment.
Because naming is so essential.
It is.
To sanity and the affirmation of life,
Right.
to be able to name what it is.
Some little semblance, not of control, but just of awareness of the commonality of this cycle and recycle of the human experience. So I'm quite confident Jesus knew this psalm by heart, and it just broke forth pretty clearly. Well, it's been a rich psalm,
Yeah, very much so.
and important for every season of life, but particularly for the Lenten season as we approach Easter. It's a good gift. It's a good gift.
It's been really wonderful to study it and talk about it with you, Gregory, and thank you for joining us. This is a psalm that you could study for a whole year and still not exhaust. So, in any case, continue in your explorations yourself of this psalm. We want to thank you for joining us today. Do join us again and watch us on the web if you like at paducah2.org. But thank you, and do join us with Paducah Cooperative Ministry in doing God's good work with our human hands. Shalom.
In mission